This is Jed Disler, and welcome to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. You can subscribe to the Piano Maven podcast through my Substack page by clicking on the link in the episode description. Paid subscribers get bonuses such as downloads of the month and Piano Maven Zoom meetings where we talk about our listening experiences and our various piano obsessions. So please consider subscribing and help us reach out further into the piano community to keep this podcast in production. As many of you may know, I have great admiration for the Italian pianist Sergio Fiorentino, who lived from 1927 until 1998. He had a kind of atypical career. He started off with tremendous success in Europe and South America and New York in the late 40s and early 1950s. He suffered injuries in a 1954 airplane crash that set him back for several years before he could resume his activities. Over time, he gradually retreated from public performance and concentrated mainly on teaching, although he did give concerts in Italy and also made a lot of broadcast performances. However, starting in 1992, he began to record and perform again in earnest, thanks in great part to the encouragement and support of a great admirer of his, Ernest Lumpe, who is a German record collector who had been avidly collecting and researching Fiorentino's discography. Ernst Lumpe had arranged for Fiorentino to record again, and these new recordings generated a newfound international interest in Fiorentino's artistry. So the pianist gave performances in Germany and France and Taiwan and in the United States in the 1990s. And he performed several times at the Newport Festival in Rhode Island and in Providence, Rhode Island, and also in Boston. He gave two recitals at New York's Alice Tully Hall in 1997 and 1998, and I attended both of those. They were really wonderful concerts. And I also had a chance to interview Mr. Fiorentino for Piano Today magazine. I remember that he was very kind and modest, and at the end of the interview, after I had packed my tape recorder, he started improvising on a piano and just on the spur of the moment. And knowing that I also improvised, he beckoned me to join him on a second piano. And that little improvisation only lasted about 20 or 30 seconds. It didn't really seem like anything special, but all I can think of is that I was so sorry that I had packed my tape recorder because it would have been a lot of fun to have preserved that improvisation. My colleague, Emilio Pessina, who is the director of the Rhine Classics label, that's Rhine, Rhine Classics, he has brought out several important Sergio Fiorentino releases. A few years ago, he issued a box set called Sergio Fiorentino Live in USA, which is a 9-disc set containing just about all of Fiorentino's existing live and radio performances from the 1996, 97, and 98 American concerts. But most recently, he's brought out this wonderful 10 CD box set containing Fiorentino's complete recordings for the British Saga label. They've all been carefully remastered from the best existing sources, meaning either surviving master tapes or from pristine vinyl copies in Ernst Lumpe's collection. These are all presented in original jacket facsimiles with full discographical information and booklet notes that contain important documentation pertaining to the recording sessions, and also the notes clear up several quote unquote gray matters of discographical provenance. Saga was just one of the several labels operated by William Barrington Coop, for which Fiorentino recorded between 1953 and 1966. The other labels were Fidelio, Delta, and Concert Artist. The recordings made by Fiorentino for Fidelio, Delta, and Concert Artist that did not involve music of Franz Liszt appeared a few years ago in this 10 CD box set on piano classics that was entitled Sergio Fiorentino's Early Recordings, 1953 to 1966. And there was another piano classics box containing Fiorentino's complete Liszt recordings, not only for these three labels, but also the Liszt selections issued on Saga, plus the later Liszt recordings from 1992 that appeared on the APR label. So, in a roundabout way, basically everything in this new set of the complete Fiorentino recordings for Saga appears on CD for the first time, save for the Liszt selections. I only mention this because Fiorentino's Saga recordings of Beethoven's 32 C minor variations, Schumann's Carnival, and the Chopin waltzes are not to be confused with alternate versions in the Piano Classics early recordings box. Sorry to be so convoluted about this, but I just wanted to give some discographical housekeeping for whatever that's worth. But anyway, let's talk about this box set with the Saga recordings. It's a fabulous collection, and Fiorentino's tremendous virtuosity and his strong personality inform each and every selection. And it's true that he occasionally whips up solo passages and the Beethoven Emperor and Tchaikovsky First and Liszt E flat and Schumann A minor concertos, faster movements. But that really doesn't matter because it's still exciting and convincing playing. And the Hamburg Pro Musica plays much better than that era's pickup orchestra norm. It's very good orchestra playing. And also, Fiorentino plays the Gershwin concerto with a lot of idiomatic pizzazz. That was really quite a surprise, although maybe I shouldn't have been surprised. And Hugo Ringgold conducts the London Philharmonic, and it's a really vivacious accompaniment. And the Gershwin concerto is presented both in a mono transfer and also in a superior stereo remastering from the original master tapes. And this stereo version has different takes in the slow movement for whatever that's worth. Beethoven's C minor variations on Saga receives a really dramatic and dynamically contrasted reading that I think stands along with the work's finest recordings. It's true that some of Fiorentino's fast tempos in Schumann's Carnival border on being glib, but you really can't deny that his fingerwork is just so scintillating, and it's really fun to hear. Collectors who may be familiar with Fiorentino's 1990s recordings of the Liszt Ballades and the Funerai will find these earlier Saga versions much more mercurial in regard to tempo extremes and also technically fresher. And the fanciful rubatos and voicings and agogics throughout the Chopin waltzes are really old school in the best way. And in the Chopin Preludes, Opus 28, there are numerous details that are going to catch listeners off guard, such as Fiorentino's super slow motion tempos for the second prelude and the ninth prelude. And he has some very subjective phrasing and textural highlighting in numbers 5 and 8 that I find very fascinating. There's nothing routine at all about Fiorentino's Chopin nocturnes. These were issued in 1974 in stereo on Saga. I don't know if they came out before, but these recordings were made much earlier. But they're wonderful and interesting performances. He scales down the dynamics in that E flat nocturne, Opus 55, number 2, concentrating much more on the refined interplay between the right hand's duet voices and the rolling left hand accompaniment. He also sustains Opus 48, number 1's opening section at a seemingly immobile yet really gripping crawl. This is slow motion playing at its best. And that famous E flat nocturne, Opus 9, number 2's familiar melody just floats over the bar lines. After a while, you notice that hardly one measure goes by in exactly the same tempo. Yet Fiorentino's sense of timing and proportion and organic flow just make everything cohere. It's an amazing performance, actually. You have to listen to it a few times to really absorb what Fiorentino is doing. I talked about the remasterings before, and the transfers largely stem from superb digital remasterings from clean copies of original LPs supplied by Ernst Lumpe, who, as I said before, knows more about Sergio Fiorentino than anyone. I think he's certainly the world's foremost authority on Fiorentino's recorded legacy. And he also is the author of this collection's thoroughly documented and informative booklet notes. So it goes without saying that all of my fellow Sergio Fiorentino fans should get hold of this release without any question. Grab it while you can. This is a really, really important and very enjoyable box set. This is Jed Disler, and you've been listening to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. And thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to being with you next time.